Welcome to the MD Edge Daily News for Thursday, July 12th. I'm Nick Andrews.
And I'm Terry Rudd. Today, OnabutolinumtoxinA tops topiramate at chronic migraine prophylaxis.
Also today, an anti-amyloid antibody slowed Alzheimer's progression while cleaning brain amyloid.
And non-traditional cardiovascular risk factors aren't ready for clinical primetime.
But we begin today with what Judge Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation could mean for the Affordable Care Act and for abortion access. Previous rulings by the Supreme Court nominee could provide some insight should he be confirmed by Congress. In 2011, Judge Kavanaugh wrote a dissenting opinion on Seven Sky v. Holder. He noted that the ACA's individual mandate was, in fact, a tax, and that the court could not hear question about the law's constitutionality because the tax had not been levied. That dissenting opinion could become germane in the currently debated Texas v. Azar, which looks destined to reach the high court. In that case, the Department of Justice has refused to defend the ACA and is siding with Texas and 19 other states. Those states contend that the penalty for not carrying health insurance under the individual mandate is a tax. That penalty was reduced to zero by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. The plaintiffs argue that the individual mandate is unconstitutional. They also contend that the ACA provisions of guaranteed issue and community rating should also be eliminated. If confirmed, Judge Kavanaugh's views that the penalty for the individual mandate is in fact a tax could shift the Supreme Court's majority view, further putting the law into jeopardy. Judge Kavanaugh has served on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit since 2006. He was appointed by President George W. Bush. Judge Kavanaugh will face a contentious confirmation process. In addition to health care, abortion rights will be front and center in the debate. It's possible that moderate Republican senators who back abortion rights may not support his nomination. Given that the GOP majority party may only have 50 members present to vote, one GOP vote against Judge Kavanaugh could deny his confirmation. Judge Kavanaugh does not have a stated position on Roe v. Wade, but his dissenting opinion in Garza v. Hargan questioned whether the government should be involved in provisioning abortions for undocumented immigrant minors.
Patients with chronic migraine experienced nearly 400% greater odds of cutting their headache days in half after receiving OnabutolinumtoxinA compared to topiramate. That's according to the results of the multi-center open-label forward trial presented at the annual meeting of the American Headache Society. Patients who received OnabutolinumtoxinA, trade name Botox, also fared significantly better across the board in terms of safety, tolerability, and multiple patient-reported outcomes such as functional activities. The forward trial randomly assigned 282 patients to receive fixed-dose Botox at the approved dose of 155 units every 12 weeks, or to topiramate, titrated over the course of 12 weeks at 50 to 100 milligrams per day. At 12 weeks, patients could discontinue topiramate and switch to Botox. Of the 142 patients assigned to topiramate, 17 met the primary endpoint. By comparison, 99 of the 140 patients in the Botox group met the primary endpoint. Patients in the Botox group also fared significantly better on all four patient-reported outcomes. Dr. Andrew Blumenfield is the director of the Headache Center of Southern California. He says the study's key message is the efficacy of Botox, but tolerability and long-term adherence are also important because patients with chronic migraine have a difficult time staying on topiramate long enough to see good effects.
An antibody that targets clumps of soluble amyloid beta before they aggregate to plaques has passed its phase 2 trial. The agent delivered statistically significant results on a combined measure of cognition and function, while decreasing amyloid deposition in the brain. Band 2401 selectively binds to amyloid beta protofibrils and targets them for clearance. Full data on Band 2401's effect won't be released until a late breaker session July 25th at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference in Chicago. But according to co-developers Eisai and Biogen, the significant clinical improvements accrue to the highest dose tested and were evident as early as 6 months. Amyloid cleared in a dose-dependent manner as well. Dr. Keith Fargo is the Director of Scientific Programs for the Alzheimer's Association. He notes that the results make BAN 2401 the first anti-amyloid antibody to score significant results in both cognition and amyloid brain imaging in a clinical trial. But Dr. Fargo also preaches caution. He says, "We can't know if this is a breakthrough until we get past phase 3 trials." The study randomly assigned more than 800 patients with mild cognitive impairment or early Alzheimer's dementia to one of 6 treatment arms, 5 different doses of BAN 2401 or placebo. The largest dose arm was 10 milligrams per kilogram monthly. The co-primary endpoints were reduction of amyloid on PET scan and slowing of progression according to the Alzheimer's disease composite score. The 18-month data also included some information on adverse events. Both edematous and hemorrhagic amyloid-related imaging abnormalities occurred in an undisclosed number of patients. Be sure to check back in with MD Edge later this month for more coverage of BAN 2401.
Finally today are some non-traditional measures of cardiovascular risk ready for clinical primetime? Not according to the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force. The group says current evidence is insufficient to assess the harms and benefits of adding ankle brachial index, high-sensitivity C-reactive protein, or coronary artery calcium burden to traditional cardiovascular disease risk scores for asymptomatic adults. That's according to a recommendation statement published in JAMA. The task force notes that while there is some evidence that the measures slightly improve assessment models, clinical meaning is largely unknown. Treatment decisions guided by the markers have not been shown to reduce cardiovascular events or mortality. And there are no trials evaluating the additional benefit of adding the ankle brachial index, high-sensitivity C-reactive protein level, or coronary artery calcium score to traditional risk models. The group noted that testing for high-sensitivity CRP level and ankle brachial index is non-invasive. The harms of testing for coronary artery calcium score include exposure to radiation and incidental findings on CT of the chest that may lead to further invasive testing and procedures. For now, the task force recommends that clinicians use the pooled cohort equations to assess CVD risk and to guide treatment decisions until further evidence is available. Traditional risk factors include age, sex, high blood pressure, current smoking, abnormal cholesterol levels, diabetes, obesity, and physical inactivity. And that concludes this edition of the MD Edge Daily News. Links to these stories can be found in the podcast description. For MD Edge, I'm Terry Rudd.
And I'm Nick Andrews. The MD Edge Daily News is now available on iHeartRadio. You can subscribe today on your desktop or mobile device.